The Jaguars are about 40% through all the names that they are going to interview. We will talk about that and what it all means in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, yeah, it is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. Just in case you did not know, we are available everywhere where you get podcasts, or whether you watch them or listen to them. Make sure you tap into that location to make sure you do not miss an episode of the show that today is sponsored by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win or lose your first $5 bet. What up to the everydayers for joining us here every single day? We appreciate that. And I hope you, if it's your first time, enjoy the podcast. All right, here's what we're going to discuss. There's a coaching search going on with the Jacksonville Jaguars. If we could be a fly on the wall, what would you want to hear from these candidates? We'll discuss that. Collecting ideas from candidates, I will discuss the fact that I believe this is exactly what the Jaguars are doing. They know who they ain't going to hire, and there's probably half of those people don't even have a chance, but they just want to know exactly what those folks will be up to. Some of them might even be candidates to be assistant coaches, especially the ones without a job. We'll talk about that. Doing their due diligence is where we are going to begin. Most of these coaching searches that are going on around the National Football League involve a whole bunch of the same names. Sorry to tell you that. The Jaguars aren't breaking any new ground here with the names that you see them request. I will go ahead and go through those names for you right now and let you know all 10 of the people that the Jacksonville Jaguars have requested. All right, Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores. Very, very good coach, very smart coach. I do not believe they're going to hire Brian Flores. Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady. Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. Las Vegas Raiders defensive coordinator Patrick Graham. Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken. Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, former Jets head coach Robert Saleh, and Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo. All right. I like all of those dudes as coaches. I don't think they're going to hire Spagnuolo. I think that is a fact-finding mission to find out, to listen to a guy who's won so many Super Bowl rings, I've lost count. I think it's 4. It might be 5 as a defensive coordinator. Not as a head coach. He's older. I just don't think that they're going to hire him. Robert Saleh has a shot, I believe. I would be disappointed if the Jaguars hire Kellen Moore. I'm not a big Kellen Moore fan. And this is not about what he does with the Eagles. It's about what he did before he got the Eagles, when he was with the Chargers and when he was with the Cowboys. I just wasn't particularly a fan of his. Todd Monken is interesting. He's been here before as an assistant. I'm not a big Todd Monken for a head coach guy either, myself. That's just my personal preference. I do like Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, I'll get that out of the way. Both coaches that coach for the Detroit Lions are guys that I like for different reasons, but for a lot of the same reasons as well. Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator Liam Cohen sounds like the dude that everybody believes has a real good shot at getting this job. I'll tell you this, though. Liam Cohen, Julian Council told me this on the NFL show. I didn't realize it on the barbershop show. He said, the only team that's requested Liam Cohen is the Jaguars. Ain't nobody else chasing Liam Cohen like that. So that kind of sends me a little bit of a red flag, but I'm okay with it. I still think he needs to be one of the candidates. I don't think they're going to hire Brian Flores, like I said. Buffalo Bills offense coordinator Joe Brady. I think Joe Brady is a little green also. I'm just not. I'm not the one to sit here and want to hire a guy who's purely a play caller. I want to hire a leader. of men. I'm not saying that Joe Brady isn't that, but I don't know if anybody can tell me that Joe Brady is more than that because, well, they probably don't know him any more than, anybody else does. But I'm just not with it. The Jaguars need some leadership in here, man. And they need a strong, strong presence, somebody that has a whole bunch of options that if they do come here, they're coming here on a mission to do things a certain way. The Jags need way more than just some dude calling plays who's good at calling plays. We've talked about that over and over again. There's been a lot of missteps when it comes to hiring coaches, and I was reminded of that when people were telling me this weekend about Shad. Folks don't believe that Shad. Somebody said they ought to trade for Mike Tomlin. I said no. He said, well, Shad is going to mess it up anyway because that's what he always does. He screws up picking these coaches. So, there's a lot to that, right? And, you can mess up the coaching hires. I think what he's done more than anything, though, is he's kind of messed up the coach GM dynamic of a football team. I would really want Shad Khan to get the front office stuff correct to the point where we can have like a normal structure where the coach does report to the GM, or even if it's a leveled out responsibility between the coach and the GM should be the one talking to Shad Khan. I believe having a coach report directly to an owner is kind of weird to me. And I think the coach is busy enough that it kind of takes away from things that he has to sit and explain things, every single thing to an owner independently while the GM explains his business to the owner. It's just all weird, man. I just want them to get this right. And so there'd be a normal chain of command. But there's not. It's not what he's going to do. At least so far, he says that they'll both report to him. And that if he likes it, it's not a deal breaker for me, but it's just something I think is just a little bit weird and it's kind of clunky. And that's the way it feels to me. That I think there needs to be a regular chain of command on this team, but you have to first get the command part of it right. And I just don't think that Shad has done that. But they are doing their due diligence. Most of the guys on this list, on these lists, are on all of the lists. You can add Mike McCarthy. He's not on Jaguars list, but prior to me recording this, Mike McCarthy and Dallas parted ways, and there's this thought that he's probably going to end up in New Orleans somewhere. But I'm just to the point where I just want normal, man. I want normal around here. They're doing their due diligence. I would love to be a fly on that wall. So I'm going to talk next about collecting ideas from candidates. And this is the kind of stuff that happens all the time. I did a little research and I reached out to some people and they said, sure, that's exactly what happens. A lot of times they know they're not going to hire certain people, but they bring them in and they ask them questions about what would they do and how would they move forward. It's like getting a free consultation from the hottest names in the business right now. So yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do. And I give them a tip of the cap for doing that. I'm going to tell you what they could probably learn from each one of these coaches. I'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. If you're growing your small business in 2025, it comes down to how well you can hire. Let's just face it. Better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. I know from experience how important it is to make those right hiring decisions. Having access to insights like what skills candidates have, how they're connected to your network, that helps you feel confident when you pull the trigger. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your jobs for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you in part by our friends over at Prize Picks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply say one or two things. You say either more or less on player stats like passing yards and rushing and all of that stuff. Saquon got on some people's nerves last night by not going and getting that touchdown. I know, man, but most of the time he is money. You just got to know when he's going to do stuff like that. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, moving along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, talking about the Jaguars coaching search. We named all 10 of the coaches. I kind of gave you a little bit of a feeling of who I'm a fan of and who I'm not. Everybody asks me, they say, Wig, who do you want them to hire? Well, I wish I could listen to these interviews without having the privilege of listening to these interviews. I want one of the guys from Detroit, and it doesn't matter which one. I know everybody wants Ben Johnson. I like Ben Johnson. I also like Aaron Glenn. I think a good leader can find the right coordinator. Yep, I think a good leader can find the right coordinator. I wonder if Aaron Glenn comes here, if he'd hired Dennis Allen to be the defensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn coached in New Orleans from 2016 to 2020. He was the defensive backs coach. And Ryan Nielsen was on that staff. By the way, there was a tweet or something put out about Ryan Nielsen being arrogant and the Jaguar players not really being in favor of him. And some people, sent it to me. There was one particular person, I'm not going to tell you who my source is, but you can't get any more source than this. They said it was true. Said the defensive players would just ask him simple questions and he was arrogant and it's like my way or the highway. And I never saw that. I never got that impression coming from watching, observing, or listening to him. But apparently, yeah. And this was early in the season. Apparently, a lot of people was just sour on the dude. And I had no idea that. That's another misstep by Doug Peterson and another one by Shad Khan. I wonder if Doug had an edict to change his staff. I'm hearing that people believe that he had to do something because something needed to be done. And just like the Jaguars, they always either do the wrong thing or they do it incomplete. The defense actually got worse this year. Everybody keeps talking about offensive play caller. The defense actually got worse. So I'm wondering if when he does have the opportunity, by the way, only 4 of these interviews have taken place. Both guys from Detroit, Steve Spagnuolo and Patrick Graham have all interviewed. Those 4. They still have 6 to go from those that they requested. I haven't heard that anyone denied a request, so they still have that. I wonder if he gets in there when he asks him, what would you do as the leader? What would it look like? What would it feel like? If he's listening to Spagnuolo and then he listens to Patrick Graham and then he listens to Aaron Glenn. And I wonder if it's the thing that makes him more comfortable to hire those guys or if he's just going to leave room to be blown away by a lot of them. But I do believe that if he asks all of these defensive guys, ask Steve Spagnuolo, he's one of the 2 or 3 best defensive coordinators in the history of the NFL. What would you do defensively? And with our personnel, what do you see? And then ask Patrick Graham and then ask Aaron Glenn and then start comparing and contrasting that information that he receives. Now, when he gets to the offensive side of the ball, I would love to know if he is asking those questions about Trevor Lawrence also. I also would like an idea. I would be wondering if he's asking them who would they have on their staff as a offensive and defensive coordinators. What are their main assistants? And basically what you find out in these things, you find out what people lead with, you find out who they really, really are. I guess you would try to imagine them actually donning a Jaguars cap and being in that locker room and how it would feel. It would first seem to me that Shad would have to have an idea of what he wants it to feel like, what he wants it to look like. And there are a lot of y'all that probably believe that he doesn't know what he wants it to look like. He doesn't know what he wants it to feel like. And that's the problem. But he did say that they were a little bit lean also in their personnel department, in their front office. So they may be doing something. I'm hearing the name Newmark thrown around a lot. And somebody else that could be brought in to help along with, like you could make somebody direct the player personnel, and they would have, if you wanted, they would have the final say along with the coach, of course, of who the players are. And you could leave the GM in place to do nothing but negotiate contracts and to just be the overseer of the scouting department. That's pretty much what I'm hearing that some people believe Trent's role will be if they do add another personnel. Of course, they have Ethan Waugh here on staff as well, and his name was even mentioned, that maybe he has a more prominent role. But I do believe that people want Trent Baalke to not be the person making these choices. I don't think people even want Trent Baalke involved in the coaching search. But that's neither here nor there, because Shad owns the team, and Shad Khan has said that they're going to do the coaching search, and Trent said we're going to do our due diligence. So that means they're going to roll their sleeves up and interview all the same people that everybody else is interviewing. And I do believe that a good part of this is data collection when you interview all of these different coaches. Obviously, they're going to go with one person. And I could see maybe if they go with one, like an offensive coach, I could then see him coming back and doubling back to Patrick Graham and saying, hey, you want to be the defense coordinator? Because Graham coached in Las Vegas, and, their coaches got fired. So I don't know if he's still under contract, if they'd have to give him a title like assistant head coach or something that would significantly bump, that would give him a significant enough bump that that would be enough to make it not a lateral move from Las Vegas if Vegas wants to try to block him from. Now, with Tom Brady out there, I know Tom Brady knows Patrick Graham very well, so he might just leave him on as defense coordinator, and then they just go pick a coach, especially if it's somebody with Patriot ties. So I'm hearing that they're hot and heavy. They really, really want Ben Johnson. I mean, not Ben Johnson. That they really, really, really do want Coach Johnson from Detroit. And that will break a lot of Jaguar fans' hearts, man, because that's who the Jaguars want. You know what I'm saying? That's who the Jaguars want. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting, like when they get closer and who they're going to pick. It is Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson. I keep saying his name wrong because of that dude that ran track for Canada back in the day and cheated. But Ben is 38 years old, and he's a quarterback by trade. Played quarterback in college in North Carolina from 2004 to 2008. And he's been coaching in the NFL. He started with the Dolphins in 2012 to 2018, So he's been there for a long time. He has a lot of experience. He's also coached wide receivers before. So he's coached tight ends, coached wide receivers. He's been all across the offense, with the exception of offensive line. He has not been an offensive line coach. So, yeah, I am of the belief that the Jaguars are going to hire a good coach with a good name. Now, does that mean that they're going to all of a sudden turn into winners? No, that doesn't mean that at all. Does not mean that. So I got into this. Let me tell you something else. And I hope the young man is listening. I can be kind of no nonsense when it comes to dealing with stuff on social media. A guy asked me today on social media. It was an interesting question, but I wanted the person to think. So I'll tell you exactly what happened. He said, how do you know that? He said, he talked about the fact that I said that there was a quick turnaround and used Washington as an example. He says, Well, how do you know if it's a quick turnaround or not? And it's only been 1 year. I kind of think I know what he was saying. He was saying it's too early to call that a successful quick turnaround. No, it isn't. And that's why I kind of snapped with the way that I did, because it's almost like someone asked you a leading question. Basically, he does not believe that you can label the Commanders' turnaround as successful because it's only been one season. That's his interpretation. So when you ask me a question like that, I'll go ahead and explain it to you. Don't put your interpretation on my words and then ask me a question based off of what you believe instead of what I believe. Because what I believe, I said it in the podcast. I said a quick turnaround, which is what it was. Washington picked third, and they won 12 games. Now 13 with a playoff game. That's a turnaround. Whether it lasts or whether it's sustainable, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and wait 2 or 3 years to give you an opinion to tell the Jaguars, look, you can do this the right way by cleaning house and getting rid of everything. The context is that Shad doesn't clean house and he doesn't get rid of everything. When he talks about how hard it is to go hire 85 new people and all of this stuff. So the context for me is you can turn this thing around really, really fast and put enthusiasm right back. Doug Peterson did it, but it was short-lived because they made so many mistakes after that, and it was almost fool's gold, right? They won all of those games. They were 2-7 and won all those games down the stretch. And then the following year, they got off to a hot start and lost all of those games down the stretch. It's because they made errors. You see, but winning 9 games is not winning 12. Winning 9 games in the worst division is not winning 12 games. It's just that it's easy to understand when you just look at it in a vacuum. I said a quick turnaround. That's exactly what Washington did. They turned it around really, really fast. Whether it's sustainable, it does not matter because they had a turnaround. They're in the playoffs and they won a playoff game and they're one of the final 4 teams in the NFC. They went from picking third overall to that. That is a fast, quick turnaround. Don't worry about the results. Don't worry about how long it lasts or are they going to make mistakes. No, what they did is turn their franchise around in 1 season, period. That's it. There ain't no other way you have to look at it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So now maybe you understand, if the young man is out there, he'll understand exactly why I went the way that I went. I just told him to read his own post. If you read your own post, you'll realize the mistake you made. You basically got you. I got you. You don't even know how long Washington's going to ride this wave. I'm just talking about what they've already done in 1 off season. They turned their franchise around. They were the laughing stock of not only the NFL, they were the laughing stock of sports. And now they're in the playoffs and everybody's loving them again. Doesn't mean it has to be sustainable. They fixed it in 1 season. Whether it lasts or not, they are in the playoffs with a shot to go to the Super Bowl. That's what I'm talking about. So the Jaguars want to try to get there, and they're trying to find the candidate that's going to allow them to do it the way Washington did with picking their coach and picking their coordinators and picking their guy in the draft. They got a lot of that stuff right. The Jags, it's a little bit different because they're not going to be starting completely over because they still have a lot of residue and remnants of this past season. That's what makes this so bad for me. And if we could be a fly on the wall, what would we want to hear someone say? I'm going to tell you exactly what that is. I'm going to do it in just a second here in the 3rd segment on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored in part by our friends over at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives to doinks at the last second, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website and share all of the knowledge that you get with your friends and buddies and tell them that FanDuel is the place to be. Now, when you do visit that website, FanDuel.com, do it to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Third segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. I got people sending me mock drafts. My man Dalton. Let me tell you what Dalton did. Dalton did a mock draft. He took Ted McMillan at 5, came back and got an edge rusher named Mike Green, my boy from Marshall. Then he got Azaria Thomas in the 3rd round, Mason Taylor, tight end, who was my tight end 3, my personal tight end 3. I don't know about anybody else. Ollie Gordon, a running back from Okie State, Dylan Fairchild, an interior offensive lineman from Georgia, and Nazir Stackhouse, defensive tackle from Georgia. That's a hell of a draft. He said he thought I'd like it. I love it. So I shouted him out here on the show right in real time. If we could be a fly on the wall during this interview process, what would we be wanting to hear? This is what I would want to hear. I need my own personnel guy. Nothing against Trent. Not saying that I can't work with him because they probably don't even know him. I just know for us to find, I'm not talking about what I can't do. I wish one of these coaches would say this. I'm not talking about what I can or can't do with Trent. What I'm going to tell you is this. If you get this dude and bring him in here, I know I can work with him. I know we will create magic together. This ain't about whether or not Trent is going to play nice or if we're going to agree on everything. We might, but I ain't got to tell you Mike with this other dude, because this other dude is a dude that I know personally, and we damn near think the exact same way. And I think that's what Shad has to understand about this. Why would you force people to work together that may not be complementary towards each other? A GM has to understand the heartbeat of the coach, man. You got to be connected that way. So I would really, really want someone to say, look, I'm not with all of that traits crap. I need smart, good, hard-nosed football players, and I don't care if their arms aren't as long. I just need dudes, Jimmies and Joes, that just know how to go and play. I wish somebody who like Aaron Glenn or either Ben Johnson say, look, in Detroit, man, physical stuff, yeah, it does matter, but we worry more about what their heart is. And with all those injuries they have up there, it's about blood and guts for us, man. It ain't about who has the longest arms, dog. It's about who's going to go out there and get it and play like they out of their mind when it comes to winning football games. And I think the reality that needs to smack them in their face over there at the stadium and at the workplace is that all of that stuff sounds good, but you can't manufacture heart and toughness. You need good, hard-nosed, smart football players that love the work, that love the process. All right? You need coaches that are all in line. You need GMs that don't talk to dudes while they're doing drills. Let the coaches handle that. You circumvent their authority when you do it. Man, when I was in the military, and I know people hate when I compare things to the military, but I got to explain this. We'd be in guard mount where our flight sergeant would be telling us the rules of the day. Commander would come in, everybody would pop to attention, and basically flight sergeant would give him the room. Commander will say something, then he'll say, go ahead and proceed. And he'll stand and watch the flight sergeant do his job. That's the way this goes, man. Those players respect people that have a whistle in their mouth when they're on that field. That's what they want to do. Usually if a GM wants to talk to a player, if it ain't high and by, man, call my agent, dog. I ain't got time for that. I think you circumvent the authority of a coach when you're on the field in any capacity, talking to guys, saying anything to them. I was standing right there one time. He said something to Jarian Jones in the end zone. Jarian's looking at him. He said, hey, get your hands up, do this, do this, do this. Jarian had 2 coaches within 30 feet. And they were waiting on him to come back over there, and they could have talked. They could have spoke to him and talked to him. It's just like, that's not, I've been around this a long time, man, and I've gone to a lot of practices. And you know, folks want to say they want to send me videos of John Lynch and all these people walking around 49ers practice. I didn't say he shouldn't be there. Every GM I've ever seen has always been there. But you know what they do? They come up and talk to the media. They don't talk to those dudes. They don't stand in the middle of the action. But that's what Trent Baalke decides to do. And I really believe that it should be one heartbeat. I think you want those dudes to go to battle on Sunday, they better have singular focus on each other and those coaches and not even be thinking about you. So, yeah, if I could be a fly on the wall, one of the things that I would want is somebody to say that. You want to be a coach-centric team, then you have to let me have my authority and not circumvent it by doing and saying things or asking why certain guys aren't playing. I think the coach needs to make a decision on who plays, when they play, how much they play, and all of that stuff. I don't think a GM needs to have anything to do with that, but that may not be reality according to the Jacksonville Jaguars. What is reality is we're here every single day giving you the best we got on the Locked On Podcast Network, and that includes me doing double duty on the NFL show. That's right. I got a show called The Barbershop. It comes on in the afternoon every single day at about 2 o'clock. You can find it wherever you get your podcast. And there's a double dose of it because in the morning, Tyler Rowland wakes you up with Locked On NFL, the AM show. Make sure you check them both out wherever you get your podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. More stuff on coaches all week. We'll be here all week, like they say in the comedy clubs back in the day. Until then, you guys take care of each other. We'll see you next time here on the Locked On Jaguars podcast.